Morning, new details related to the disturbing disappearance of Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi. He was seen walking into the Saudi consulate in Istanbul, Turkey, nearly 10 days ago. Please look at those images. The footage shows him entering, but he never leaves the building. The Washington Post reports Saudi Arabia's crown prince ordered an operation to lure Khashoggi back to Saudi Arabia from the U.S. and detain him. That is according to U.S. officials familiar with intelligence intercepts. And NBC News has exclusively obtained screenshots of text messages. They show Khashoggi checked his cell phone just before he entered the consulate, but he never read the messages sent to him just minutes later. Here's the president weighing in on the situation just this morning.
We're being very tough, and we have investigators over there, and we're working with Turkey, and frankly, we're working with Saudi Arabia. We want to find out what happened. He went in, and it doesn't look like he came out. It certainly doesn't look like he's around.
MSNBC's Ayman Mohyeldin joins me now. Okay, the president is making news there, saying we have investigators in Turkey, but he's not saying much else.
Yeah, he's not saying much else except defending a little bit of the relationship between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia.
Which he has a good one.
Yeah, which certainly has been. If you look at it from the kind of transactional perspective that it has benefited both countries. I think at this particular stage, what is interesting is that you have a group of senators, bipartisan group of senators, who have essentially triggered an investigation by sending a letter to the president to see if there are any violations of the Magnitsky Act, which means the president should sanction or hold accountable anybody involved in extrajudicial killings. Something like this would fall under that category if it is in fact proven to be the Saudi Arabian government. There are still a lot of questions, as you mentioned. My colleague Josh Letterman here at the investigative unit has been trying to piece together the timeline of his disappearance, and we certainly have now narrowed down a window as to when he was communicating with people through these WhatsApp messages. And all of us who are familiar with these WhatsApp messages know the check marks when they're gray, that they're unread. When there are two check marks, that means they've been delivered, and when they are blue, it means that they've been read. So this individual who Josh has obtained these screenshots from was obviously communicating with Jamal Khashoggi the night before. He was reading the links that were being sent to him, or the messages that were being sent to him. And then suddenly at around 1:06 p.m., about 8 minutes before he goes in, was the last message that we have confirmed. And then he essentially falls off the grid. There are no more confirmed messages, no more blue check marks that he was actually seeing those messages that came in once he entered the building.
Ayman, stay with me. I want to bring, this is so disturbing. I want to bring in Nayyera, former White House senior director and State Department senior advisor during the Obama administration. Nayyera, here's a president reacting to the Washington Post reporting about MBS's alleged role in this.
That sounds like it goes right to the top, Mr. President.
Well, it would be a very sad thing, and we will probably know in the very short future. We have some incredible people and incredible talent working on it. We don't like it. I don't like it. No good.
Okay, this creates a big political problem for this White House, specifically the president's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He has an open line of communication, a very good relationship with the Crown Prince, and the president says he will not block Saudi arms sales over this, but still, we don't exactly know what has happened. So what happens next?
Well, and here's what we do know about Mohammed bin Salman, who MBS is the crown prince. He came into power in a very bloody way. He effectively executed and exiled about 11 of his relatives to become the crown prince earlier last year. In that process, the United States also was the subject of a big publicity tour for a new Saudi Arabia that was going to allow women to drive, that was going to try and open up its economy. And so he was hailed by many people here, including the White House, as the face of a new Saudi Arabia. And what we have seen since that publicity tour is that Saudi Arabia is still the same. Many of those women were arrested. Many of the activists have been arrested. And now this attack on a journalist without anybody in the Saudi government engaging publicly or speaking publicly to condemn it indicates that this goes not just to the highest levels of the Saudi government, but to the U.S. government as well. You have Jared Kushner, the son, on one side, and you have the son on the other, both effectively operating as families running a country. So they have a lot in common personality-wise, and now we have to see if that personality can save a U.S.-Saudi relationship.
Listen, Nayyera, hindsight's 20/20, but could the United States have done more in this situation? Based on what we know, was this an intelligence failure, or did the intelligence not show enough of a threat?
I think this was a failure, a political failure, to focus on U.S. values and projecting them abroad. The relationship the United States has had with Saudi Arabia has been an unholy alliance for many, many years. Saudi is the subject of many human rights abuses, and in this administration has now been receiving increasing arms sales approved by the U.S. government to attack civilians in Yemen, for example, all in the name of being able to curtail Iran. So the United States, under the Trump administration, has taken a very heavy hand siding with Saudi Arabia instead of trying to play more balance in the region. And this is ultimately the direct result of it. They now feel they can act with impunity to undermine freedom of the press, women's rights, and that the White House is going to take more than a week to even say boo about the situation.
Ayman, realistically, what can this administration do to get real answers about Jamal?
Well, the United States certainly has very robust intelligence gathering capabilities in that part of the world, so they can certainly, through their own assets and human intelligence and signal intelligence, acquire enough evidence.
They may be deploying them. We don't know that.
And they may have already deployed them, and certainly a concept like Saudi Arabia's in Istanbul would be worthy of intelligence gathering because of just where it sits in the geopolitics of the region. So that's one. Two, they could certainly, through the cooperation they have with a lot of intelligence agencies in the region, gather what they also have. Certainly the Turks, who have been piecing together and leading this investigation, have come out very forcefully. They have said they have the evidence, although they haven't provided it to the public. They say they have the evidence of what happened inside that consulate. And from their own intelligence capabilities, the United States and Turkey would share that. It's interesting because it goes back to the politics that the U.S. and Turkey's relationship has been strained in the last couple of months because the president has been tweeting about the Turks. They've been very upset about the detention of an American pastor. So relationship between Turkey and the U.S. has strained. So that might mitigate a little bit of the intelligence sharing cooperation. If there was a really good relationship, the Turks may have already provided that, because you wouldn't be hearing from American senators so definitively. You had Chris Murphy on Morning Joe today when he was asked, does he have any reason to believe that Jamal Khashoggi was still alive? He said no. So he's obviously gotten to the point where he is convinced that he is no longer alive. The Americans clearly must have some evidence as to what has happened to him. Whether they got that from their Saudi, Turkish, or other allies in the region, or whether they got that from themselves, that, I think, is the central question when that information will be made public.
And
to Ayman's point about Turkey's relationship with the United States, Turkey itself has a terrible relationship with its own media and with international media as well. They have actually jailed several reporters who have been working as freelancers for American publications. So they may not take the United States side on feeling good about freedom of media.
My goodness, this is complicated. We certainly hope to get more information, and we hope that Jamal's fiance gets information. Nayyera, Ayman, thank you so much. This is a really upsetting story.